Okay, there you go, baby. We're gonna start. I guess I'm gonna show you some La Jolla, baby. There's a few things I wanna show you. Some blah, blah, blah. I might show you some animals. Of course, nature. Those are my oranges. I always liked oranges, man. In fact, when I was a young kid, my grandmother and I would watch, I moved in with my grandmother after my granddad died. It was that was a weird experience. I'll tell you someday in another video where, basically this would kind of encapsulate my story. I kind of encapsulate a lot of who Jonathan Fibonojji is in this story. So I wake up one day, and I'm going to get to Mathew, 12. In fact, we're going to do kind of Bible study and kind of like to integrate some things. Here we go. Hang on, let's go here. What do you think about here? I'm going to go, let's see. Okay, here's the story. Jonathan Fibonojji. How did Jonathan Fibonojji become Jonathan Fibonojji? You got to tell your own story. And I want to kind of tell you my story, tell you a little bit of Jesus' story. Who knows, man? I might even tell you this guy's story. He always sits down like, what's going on here? It's like, what's up? Who's this guy talking to himself? Why is he? What's it? Toyota? Is he? What's he? I don't know. Is he promoting cannabis? What the? So where do you want to start? Okay, here we go. I wake up. I'm in Plano, Texas. My dad had bought a house in Bedford, Texas. It was me and my stepdad, my then stepmom, and then I had a brother. You never heard of him. His name was Jake, stepbrother. He was kind of one of those kind of weird. He was like my brother for like about 2 years, and then they divorced. And then one day I wake up, and my dad says, "I got some news for you." I'm like, "What's going on?" And so usually when people tell you that they have news, it's never good news. It's like when a woman says, "Can we talk?" It's like, well, we're already talking. If they announce that they're going to talk, or worse, when they say, "I have a question for you." When someone tells you that they're about to tell you something, then it turns out that my granddad died, and he said to me, "Now you have a decision." Now keep in mind, I grew up with my grandparents, and I grew up eating oranges and watching old people's TV, and also going to old people's religion, and in many ways, I started my life living with people who lived their lives in World War II. So it's kind of an interesting way to grow up. So here I'm a young kid in Oklahoma. They called me Johnny, John Boy, one of 6 kids. And anyway, I'm kind of being tossed around. My stepmom remarried and married a guy that loved the idea of a green card. Just didn't like the fact that she had kids. So for some reason, kids started leaving the nest, not because they were ready to leave. They had to leave. My stepdad is kind of one of those guys that needed to save $1. So he told my stepmom, or my mom, said, "Hey, Rebecca, would you mind getting rid of some of these kids?" And she's like, "Okay." Which one? So my sister was the first to leave, and then my brother Ben, he got a pass. He was kind of a very compliant 9 kid, very Enneagram 9. So he kind of went along to get along. So he wasn't really a target. And then I was always John Fibonojji, baby. Boom. And I had an opinion, and I had a point of view, and I had a perspective. And so he's like, this kid, it's kind of caused me too much trouble. He's back talking. So I was the back talking kid even then. In fact, I remember vividly my 4th grade teacher. I insisted that she show me in the literature where chewing gum was illegal or not, where it was against the rules. So you got to just picture, here I am, Jonathan back then, making my 4th grade teacher, Miss Dennis, in Plano, Duncan, Oklahoma. I think my school was called Plato Elementary. I'm insisting that she show me in the code where chewing and gum is illegal. So where do we go? Where do we go from here? So I grew up with my grandmother, and then that things kind of got, hard, and so I went to live with my mom again, and things got hard, so I went to live with my stepdad, or my real dad, and then things got hard there. Then I went back to live with my grandparents, and then I went to live with my uncles, and then things got hard there. I went to live with my mom, and things got hard there. And then I think I might have, anyway, I was living with my grandmother, I think, at this time. there was a lot of those. It's called, and so just kind of truncate that experience. A lot of people have that experience. It's called a chaos kid, and a lot of boys go through that especially. So you're like, okay, oranges, the book of Mathew, you're going to show me La Jolla. This is all running together. Well, one thing is I want to tell you some blah blah, and I want to tell you my story, and I want to fuse a lot of the things that I'm showing you on this channel. Like obviously I love nature, but I also want to be more transparent of my own story and my own perspective, and for whatever reason communicate my truth in the most authentic way, and also to tell my way in a way that that is as true to my authentic voice as possible, and not always authentic to culture, to religion, to people. I want to tell my story. And for some reason, just like a painter has a desire to paint, I have a deep, 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 almost unquenchable desire to share my perspective and to tell my truth. And to tell you what I think is beautiful, and to show you what I think is beautiful, and also to show you what I think is pathetic and what I think is reprehensible. So later we're going to go look at some animals at the National Geographic event here in La Jolla, and it's just it's breathtaking, some of this photography, and that's beautiful, and I want to share that. I'm going to share a story of oranges, of how I grew up with my only really saving grace was my grandma. My granddad died, and back to the story of my granddad dying. I woke up one day in Bedford, Texas, and my dad simply said, he goes, "You have a choice." He didn't say good morning. He didn't ask me if I wanted breakfast. He goes, "You have a choice. You can leave and go to your granddad's funeral, or you can stay here." Remember, I was asleep probably 20 minutes ago. You can leave and go to your granddad's funeral, who I loved, or you can stay here, but you can't come back. Good morning, baby. Good morning, baby. So guess what I did? I was like 12, 13, 14, I don't know, something like that. 10, 11, 12, 13, something like that. I was in that area. I said, well, I want to obviously go to my granddad's funeral. And so going to my granddad's funeral meant that I was going to lose a home, and I just didn't have the place for that. And then I did something really, anyway, there's a lot more to that story. Within 48 hours, I was meeting some people in Oklahoma, in Duncan, Oklahoma, from Duncan. We probably met at one of those Loves. Remember, if you're from Oklahoma City, you know what Loves is. Boom, I was starting over. My job at 12, 13 years old was to go help my grandmother grieve. 20, 30-year marriage. I don't know how long they were married. Help her pick. That's how I spent my adolescence. Going to her old religion, her old man ways. Good morning, baby. All right, Mathew 12. This is interesting. Oh yeah, we would while we would watch Golden Girls or 2020. John Stossel, remember that guy? Or when we would watch Wheel of Fortune, she would peel me oranges. Good morning, baby. That's how I grew up. It says, "Come to me, and I will cause." Just going to leave you with those 6 words. Come to me. Each one of those is so rich. Come to me. When I was on the beaches of La Jolla recently, I heard those 2 words. Come to me. And then so much in my own journey, I'm starting to understand the word "I will cause," and then God is the cause. And we have to look at cause and effect, and how a lot of times we talk about good and bad, but we don't really talk about cause and effect. Like for example, we talk about, do I want to piss you off already? I was going to talk about African Americans and how we incarcerate them as a group of people, and then we make it where they can't work, and then it's hard to work with a record, and then when they get out, they have nothing to do, and they're usually homeless, so they go back. It's called recidivism. I will cause and effect, baby. You're like, oh my goodness, is he white, or is he, I don't know what box to put him in. Okay, I will cause, and then here we go. Let me piss somebody off. Jesus pissed a lot of people off. He healed a lot of people, but he talked about whoever finds his lower life will lose it. And whoever loses his lower life will find a higher life. He said all kinds of weird things, Jesus. Pissed a lot of people off. That's why they killed him. I will cause. And it says, this is kind of interesting. Mommy, daddy stuff. Here he says, check this out. Jesus is talking. He says, and he went to them and he goes, where'd he go here? It says, here it is. I'm sorry. It's chapter 12, verses 47. It says, someone said to him, listen, your mother and your brothers are standing outside seeking to speak to you. You're like, that's not weird. That's just normal. People talk all the time to brothers and sisters. This is Jesus. Jesus the Christ, or before I'm not sure, but he is Jesus at this point, Mathew 12. And he says something very interesting to his own family. Remember, this is Mother Mary. This is that woman. Jesus says to that woman, he replied to the man and told him, who is my mother and who are my brother? Who are my brothers? Interesting. You don't really, I'm about to go to a Catholic church and pray. I'm going to kneel. I love how you can kneel at a Catholic church. I just think that's so important. I'm not even Catholic, and I like that. One of my favorite places to go right now in La Jolla is this Catholic church to pray and to kneel. Of course, I like cannabis, so I like to go in there and get high and pray in this Catholic church. And the other day I walked in and I just had this unmistakable need to take my shoes off. And then before I knew it, I said, well, I just need to take everything out of my pockets. And I said, you don't come before the Lord with shoes and loaded down. So I put all my things, my hat, my cannabis, my wallet. I went in there and I prayed, and that's a private prayer, but I prayed for all kinds of things. I prayed the Lord's Prayer, and I probably even was convicted of how hard it was for me to leave my things, my belongings, outside in public. And the Lord's like, because you don't trust your brother. I had to deal with that, and then I believe, well, that's a private prayer. I prayed for my kids and prayed about the things I hated in this world, injustice. I prayed for my own sins and against my sins and asked for God to forgive me. 47 goes into 48. It says, but he replied to the man and told him, who is my brother? Who is my mom? Who is my mother? And who are my brothers? And stretching out his hand, he says, he defines who his brothers are. He says not only 12, but all my adherents. The adherents. Who are my mother? Here are my mother, and here are my brothers. And if I haven't offended you, let me just be very direct. It's Jesus the Christ, or Jesus becoming the Christ, literally says that that's his family, those adherents, those adhere to his words and who love him. And whoever does my will, my Father in heaven, is my brother and sister and mother. Kind of sounds like the third step prayer. Man, that's the hardest. I'm talking about 12-step stuff. Relinquishing your will to the care of God. And I got to kind of close this video out. I'm always running out of time and got things to do. And I got to disagree with somebody. I got to disagree with Joyce Meyer, one of my favorite pastors, man. I just love what she does. In fact, a lot of what I do is kind of modeled after her. She didn't really belong to a church. She just kind of spoke her truth, and I just love that, because I'm like, well, same God, just different message, and maybe I could, Anyway, I love Joyce Meyer, and recently she was talking about how some people they're not Christians because, and she said, and again, I love Joyce Meyer, so if you say anything about Joyce Meyer, I'll probably hit you in the face or throw an orange at you, because I love her, and very few pastors have impacted me and blessed me more than her. And she said, she goes, I kind of believe people don't follow Jesus because they're afraid they're going to have to change their lifestyle, and that's probably true on some level. But the more, as I was kind of walking and praying today on my La Jolla prayer, or I got to wrap this up. I said, why it's hard for me to trust God and do His will and adhere to Him, is because I'm not sure that He's a good God and He'll take care of me. to the care. The third step word has care in it. You guys have a great day.